Welcome to another episode of She Unleashed. She Unleashed is, of course, brought to you by Phumza Gyani, and we're talking to the most amazing women from across the globe, and they're sharing with us their pearls of wisdom, and we're really having real conversations here, not only focusing on the positive aspects of their careers, but also their struggles, the challenges. They're sharing with us how they overcame specific phases in their lives. And today we are spoiled for choice because we have one of the most dynamic people I've ever met. And she is predominantly in the construction space. Yes, she's doing many other things. And I think that's the versatility of being a woman. We are multifaceted, we're doing many things, and it is our time. Why not? So today I'm bringing you Innocentia Mahlangu. And she is, of course, award-winning and internationally recognized professional project manager and senior civil engineer. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree as well as a Master of Science degree in civil engineering. And amongst these things, I did say to her, I will not read her entire bio because it is quite extensive. She holds multiple roles in associations that are really there for the advocacy of women in construction. She is prominent in the space of construction, either from a project management perspective, but also on other multifaceted roles where she's pushing for progress. She's pushing for more women in the industry. And she also is an author. She also has a movement that she has just launched about entrepreneurs and women in the entrepreneurship space. And she's doing many other things. Innocentia, let me hand over to you. Who are you and what are you up to as of late?
Wow, Phumza, that's a very big question. But thank you for the introduction as well. And often when somebody articulates my bio, I think you're talking about someone else. But I think it's always, every now and then, it's good to hear it. So thank you for having me. And I just want to mention, I think you said you call this She Unleashed. You mentioned my book. It's actually called Unleash Your Unique Advantage.
Wow.
I love that we both had something or thought about the concept of unleashing. But we'll probably talk a little bit more later. In terms of who I am, I often start at different junctures of my life. If I go as far back as childhood, I started off or grew up in a semi-rural town or township called Kwaggafontein, where I spent about 13 years there. And I started, being interested in construction and creating things from that juncture, based on what I would observe. And then I moved on to another different environment where I was then exposed more to engineering and construction. And my dad was quite influential in that decision as well, because he was in the construction industry. So you can say that, civil engineering and construction was somewhat my destiny. That's where I find myself today. So I went on to complete a civil engineering degree at Wits. I completed a master's. But before that, I then worked in engineering consulting for a number of years. You've mentioned some of the roles I've fulfilled. Design engineer, resident engineer, both in the office and as well on construction site. I became a very young construction manager at the age of 26. And that's where my passion as well for creating things or transforming the world around me was reignited. I find myself now working across different sectors because, as you know, project management takes you all across sectors, and it does not matter what your technical background is. So I've worked across mining, metals, infrastructure projects, as well as other sectors as well. So that's where I find myself, and that's a quick snapshot of my not so long journey.
So the topic for today is called You Owe Yourself the Future You Want. And I know this resonated with you because of the many hats that you wear. What was the thinking in your head when you got that title that you owe yourself the future that you want? What were you thinking?
For me, it says you are the master of your own destiny. And for me, that's certainly the truth. I realized early in my career that in order for me to get somewhere, I needed to be able to push myself to those levels. I did not hold anybody responsible for developing me or growing me. But in that same context, I recognized that I cannot walk alone. And then I started pulling people around me that could help me achieve my visions. So I've always been deliberate about my goals. What do I want? What makes sense for me? What am I passionate about? And then driving myself to improve towards that mission, but also pulling my network. I call it my squad, to achieve that goal. So it's really important to understand or accept that we are the masters of our own destiny, and we create our own reality.
Fantastic. That is an amazing answer. Tell me, in creating your own destiny, have you ever come across challenges, and what were these challenges like for you?
So I think one of my biggest challenges is that I tend to be impatient, which is a problem. Because, you have this big vision of, I want to be this person, or I want to elevate to this level. But you don't, at some point, you need to accept that the road to success is faced with, I don't call them failures. It's setbacks, because I believe you only fail if you give up. Other than that, if you keep going, you've just discovered how not to do something. So accepting that it's a long journey. I have this phrase, or perhaps I've read it somewhere, that when it comes to a career, for example, it's a marathon and not a sprint. So I find myself to consistently readjust or recalibrate myself to say, this is my goal. This is the ultimate goal. Let me also have a view of the interim milestones, those little celebrations that you can have towards the bigger goal. And then accept that in as much as you can have a timeline for achieving something, not everything is going to go according to plan. The other element of it I had to make peace with is being open to the plan changing, and understanding that I may want this today. If I don't want the same thing tomorrow, it's also okay. It doesn't mean I've failed. I've just shifted or readjusted my vision to align more with who I am. So I think those were some of the bigger challenges and discoveries I had to make in this journey.
Now tell me, you strike me as a dynamite. I mean, in just meeting you and the things that you're involved in. What do your other peers say about you, and how do you not appear to be overwhelming to them? I mean, with having such a big vision, as well as the energy to also follow through on it.
Yeah. Nobody's called me overwhelming yet. I'm glad. But often sometimes people may not tell you that part of it, but I believe the people and my peers, even younger people in the industry, draw inspiration from my journey. And it's not even about them attaining what I've attained. It's about whatever I've attained, what does it mean to them? How does it inspire them to do more, even more? And I find that more than anything, I find people are drawing inspiration from that. And, especially young women, they look at me and they said, some of the most touching things where they said, because I saw you do it, I realized that I can too. And for me, it just speaks to that inspiration. And I believe one of my other phrases is as you are blessed, be light and illuminate the world. So I'm illuminating the world, and I'm enjoying that the people around me are finding that inspiration or that light that I'm trying to portray.
And then how do you bring that to life within your industry, the light? I know you hold multiple positions. Maybe it's to talk more about the work that you're doing in the advocacy and inclusion of other women in the industry.
So in terms of bringing light, I think you bring light by following your passion as the foundation. For many years in the industry, I was trying to find, my own identity. And I got to a point where, and I found that I found something that I call my bigger calling, right? And I think my calling is I succeed to advance other women in the industry, and for me that's my bigger calling. And a lot of the initiatives I get involved with, you'll find that are attached to that bigger calling, whether I'm speaking at a webinar, whether I'm starting a nonprofit organization, wherever I plant myself, I try and make sure that that calling is honored. And then in terms of, broader industry involvement, I'm quite active with the South African Institution of Civil Engineering as their diversity and inclusion chair. I also sit in the executive board. I'm also an ambassador for an initiative called the Women in the Built Environment Initiative, a global movement of women supporting each other. I founded my nonprofit organization in engineering called She Engineers. There's the she again. And that's to advance women in male-dominated industries through establishing connections, mentorship networks, and resources to advance women. I also engage with students and in institutions of higher education, in high schools. So it's all this thread is about advancing women, and with my involvement with the Project Management Institute as well as being a speaker specifically around how can we transform our industry such that it's more inclusive to women. So there's a common thread towards all my involvements, and it's founded in what I deem as my higher calling or my passion.
So where is the stage of winning? What do you see as you achieving the ultimate vision?
I win every day. So I win every day. And what I done early in my career, I set certain milestones. And I realized that as I hit those milestones, it's a lot more difficult now to see for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. And the milestones in the first 10 years of my career were around build your technical know-how. It was centered around being a technically competent, strong person. Whether it's obtaining a master's degree or pursuing an MBA. So I had those hard goals. And then those were easy because you can say in 3 years and 10 years or whatever. But now I find myself as I move into different spaces, I get redirected every now and then. I find myself in positions that I never thought I would, right? And in those milestones, for me, it's success. So I don't view success as the destination, because when you regard it as a destination, then you stop and then you don't grow. So if you were to ask me, where are you 20 years from now? I'll probably tell you I'm a CEO of something, but it could be different, right? Yeah, so I think success for me is just moving confidently, intently in the direction of your purpose. That's the definition for me.
So your title of the topic today is called You Owe Yourself the Life That You Want. So out of all these achievements, which part of it would you say this was the life I wanted? This was the aspect of my life that I wanted?
So, and I enjoy being a thought leader in the industry. But the interesting thing there is that it's not something I've always, meaning, say, when I started my career, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Interesting how it evolved there was a point when I realized that very few women like myself speak anyway. And then we find that because we don't show up, we perpetuate this image of, a woman in science, technology, engineering, mathematics careers or STEM. They don't exist. There are no women in construction. There are no women in consulting. So by us not being visible, we are perpetuating that image. So many years ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to speak more. I'm afraid of public speaking. I'm terrified. I sound like a robot, but I'm going to speak, and one day I'll be great at it. And I took that decision to do that. And now it turns out that that's the bigger thing for me that really excites me, that I get to do my job, do it well, but also show up and speak and be somebody that people want to listen to. So that has been an interesting turn of events for me. And I just love showing up and saying, we are here, we are women, and we're here, we're in the industry. You don't have to look further and continue the misconception that there are none. Yes, there's not nearly enough, but we do exist, and the numbers are certainly growing.
So tell me about the book and what inspired you to actually put down to paper the book that you came about.
Oh, one of my favorite stories. I have many favorite stories. So the book, so touching on this aspect that we talked about being present and saying this is who I am, I exist, and hoping that it inspires somebody to actually show up as well. So what I used to do is I used to post articles on LinkedIn, as a professional networking platform. I would, realize that, I've just completed my PMP or project management professional qualification. I struggled through this, or I had some obstacles. This is how I got through it. And then I started writing articles, sort of tips about a career. What did I realize the first day I entered the workplace? Then I started writing about that as well. And then I realized that these articles were gaining so much traction because somebody can ask me about, how did you find the process of registering as a professional engineer? I'll say, wait, before I say anything to you, here's an article I wrote. And then I'd get feedback to say, oh my gosh, this is great information. Thank you for sharing. I didn't know this. So you can say that the book evolved somehow over time based on what I had been putting out as short articles. Then in the year 2020, during lockdown, December, had nothing to do. Work was done for that year. And then I said, you know what? I've been working for a number of years now. Let me write one final LinkedIn article that reflects on my career thus far. And then I started pulling together the information from LinkedIn. I'm like, no, I need more. I've learned this as well. I've learned this as well. And then it was almost as if I was possessed. I just started typing. Over a 10-day period, I wrote 70% of the book. And at that point, it wasn't a case of, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm writing a book, and then there's an empty page. But it just evolved, and it almost felt instinctive to be drawing all these things from what I had built over the years. And a lot of them then turned into chapters in the book. So that's how the book happened, and put a cover on it, gave it a name, and then that's how it emerged.
You have such an amazing gift of putting into paper or putting into execution what many women would like to. What do you feel about it as a gift to women? Because I think what we come across is many women who are capable. They can do so many things, but that action of actually executing on it becomes a struggle. What do you think? How do you think it actually prepares you best to be in the position that you are in, of being, you actually are a push for women, because you're not just the advocate, you also help women realize what they need to realize?
I believe in start small. I think sometimes the task is daunting, right? And I know a lot of women that have come up to me and they said, I've got this amazing story. I want to write a book, but I don't know where to start. The problem is that we think of that process as, say, a 200-page process, or you think of that project as a 10-year project, but start small, little tasks. Like if I tell you, Phumza, today, all you need to do, if you say you want to write a book, let's use that as an example, just take an empty page, write chapter 1, and write 3 sentences. You'll say, I've got a day to do that. That's easy. And then tomorrow I say, how about you just do, say, 6 bullet points about what chapter 1 could be about. And then you start evolving the idea from there. I think some of us are crippled by the enormity of the task at hand or ahead, but take the small steps and follow and celebrate the smaller wins. If you want to start a company, celebrate the fact that you've come up with a name, and then go register that name, even before you figured out how much profit you're going to be making 20 years from now. if we push ourselves to get through the smaller steps, you'll find that ultimately you've created something big. I think it also talks to what I said about success not being a destination. Success is the small steps. Yay, I wrote 1 page today, and that's success. It doesn't matter on whose standards. Your only competition, and you're only competing against yourself and what you achieved yesterday. So if we look at our lives as that, and don't think of it as some daunting, long-term, big thing that you need to conquer. Just break it up into small. I think it's about being agile, right? So adopting those principles to our lives, I found it to be very beneficial.
So part of what you also do is to really celebrate a lot of women. And this was testimony to the event that you held over the weekend, where you had sisters around you celebrating their wins and so on. What do you think that celebration does to someone's esteem, especially we women, being overcritical of ourselves all of the time?
We don't do it well enough. And I tend to reprimand the women around me when they are given, not even given, when there is a moment where they need to articulate their accomplishments, their accolades, and they hold back. It does nobody justice. And it's important to understand that it's not bragging. I think in our heads, we think, oh, I'll be bragging if I do this. Don't think it's owning your accomplishment. You've done the work, you've put in the work. And if you look at who you were 5 years, 6 years, whatever ago, however many years ago, who you are today, you've conquered. It's worth celebrating. And what you find that other people compare themselves to say, oh, but Pumza has done so much more. You know, she's this, she's that. That does not matter. It's celebrate who you were and who you are today, and every step it counts. And I've taken it upon myself to do that. And what I also do now is, you know, when it comes to awards, right? Some women are reluctant to even put in a nomination. You know, I'll have to prod them and go, hey, you actually are worthy of this award. And it's really, but I haven't, but I'm not, but I'm. It's just educating or reprimanding the people around me to say, hey, wake up. You're doing incredible. And don't be shy, because often when you are silent on what you've achieved, you find that people don't know. And if they don't know, then opportunities don't open for you. And it touches on your topic of being the master of your own your own destiny. You know, it's also driving and saying, listen, I'm here, and this is what I've done. So yeah, I do tend to celebrate a lot of women. The Trailblazers brunch, which we had this past weekend, and there's likely another one coming up. It's about celebrating both males and females and saying, we recognize the work that you're doing. Let's come together, let's celebrate you, but let's also be inspired by it. It's not for people that have won global awards or anything. It's even somebody that says, you know what, I signed up for this course. I did well, or I did it because it's going to help me with my passion, which is this. And it's having conversations around its passion conversations and celebrating how we are creating the world around us.
Tell me, what would you say to someone who's just, you know, started out with all this vision in her mind and now has hit that challenge in a corporate setting, or, you know, in their personal lives, and they are in the deepest doldrums right now? What advice would you give them? Because I think there is a perception that there's never been a challenge, especially when you are so driven. There's a perception that you don't have the dull moments, you don't have the, you know, also things to overcome. What would you say to that person right now?
Yeah, so I think that there might be different answers to different circumstances. But maybe I'll try and summarize it and see if it captures it all. So I would say always be guided by passion, but also always be willing to move when something no longer serves your passion. And that could be in your personal life or in your professional life. I like this quote that says, if we were meant to stay in one place, we'd have roots instead of feet.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. So if it's a case of maybe you're in an environment that's not conducive, try and understand the cause of, what's making you feel that way in that environment. Is it a person? Is it a company? Is it work that's not challenging? What's the source of that? Often you may find that, say, if it's the whole corporate environment, if you're not going to thrive and it's not going to serve your passion, you need to be looking at what will. If, for example, it's experience, you could be engaging the people that I call your squad to say, listen, I'm not feeling engaged in this environment. Can you help me, gain different types of experience? You could also look at, what industry involvement, because sometimes that as well really will reignite you being involved within your broader community. So I think be guided by passion, but always be willing to move when your passion is not being served or serviced.
That sounds fantastic. So where are we going to see you in the coming year, 2 years? I know it's a big dream and I think you've tried to answer it, but I know that there's always something up your sleeve, something that you're working towards in the next
Oh my
2
goodness,
years.
the tough questions. So I would like to grow my nonprofit organization into something bigger that has a greater impact on the African continent. So I'd like to see that expansion, because so far the energy that I've received for it affirms that this is something special. And I'd like to grow that beyond what it is now, and scale it and also make it impactful in the African continent. I, from a work perspective, I'm always willing or excited about taking on challenging work. So taking on a large execution project again, and seeing it to completion as well. So that's a big milestone. Maybe write another book. This one might be about leadership. I don't know. Still thinking. Didn't think I'd write one book. Now I'm going for a second one, maybe.
Yeah.
So those are just some of the things. But I also want to keep on being active, keep on being a voice in the industries that we work in, advising organizations on transformation issues or inclusion of women. I want to be a lot more active in that. Headlining conferences globally as well, taking on the world stage, going beyond our region and really having an impact across the globe. So yeah, that might not be 2 years. That might not be 2 years, but let's see.
Wow. So tell me, for someone who's looking for you, who wants to reach you for talks, because you're a speaker, you're a writer. I don't know if you're a ghostwriter yet or you're just a writer.
Yeah. Not a ghostwriter yet.
Okay. For someone who is looking at you to headline a conference, or where they can get your energy, because you just have this amazing energy that just keeps on giving, and someone who's wanting to follow your career quite closely, where can they find you?
So the quickest and easiest place is finding me on LinkedIn, and my handle is Innocentia Mahlangu. And they'd be able to also, I keep it updated, so they'll be able to know what conferences I'm part of, what projects I'm busy with, and I always respond to my direct messages on LinkedIn. And I'm quite open to that. So I think that's the primary place they can find me. And I'm certainly reachable there.
Fantastic.
And I also have a website, innocentiamahlangu.com. And that's where they can also purchase the book. And if there's any networking events that are being I'm hosting, information will also be on the website, Innocentia.
Fantastic. Oh, wow. You've given us certainly more than that we bargained for. And it was really a great interview. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the global spaces, in the global stages, standing up for what you love, what's your passion, women, the inclusion of women. Thank you very much for coming through to She Unleash. And I'm looking forward to the second book. I'm looking forward to the next journey in your corporate environment and all the other dreams like the NGO expanding. It was such a pleasure to have you on board. Well, there you have it to our listeners. Sure, she is a dynamite. And, just to get a little bit of that energy, she's amazing. She's also someone who is beautiful inside out, someone that you can keep as a sister, especially if you're looking on a growth trajectory for your career. There you have it. She's available LinkedIn. The book is available on her website, and you can follow her and the strides that she's making. There you have it. Well, that's the last of our episode. To all the listeners, have a good evening.